Hi everyone, this is Tanner here, and welcome to the NFL podcast. Today I'll be predicting the Super Bowl. Yes, we are finally here. It is very exciting as the New England Patriots will be taking on the Seattle Seahawks. A couple of notes before we dive into the actual predictions. These two teams, I think, are definitely worthy of being here. Both teams won their division. You have the Seahawks winning the NFC West, the Patriots winning an AFC East. And I know people look at the AFC East and say, hey, that was, maybe easier to win for New England, but you still have the Bills in that division with Josh Allen. So the fact that they are AFC's champions, I think, is very, it was a great accomplishment. I think New England had a very good playoff run. You beat the Chargers and Texans, two teams with really good defenses, and then to travel into Denver in some tricky conditions and get a tough, hard fought win over the Broncos should be an accomplishment celebrated by many New England fans. And then you go over to the Seattle side of things where, you want to talk about tough divisions. That NFC West, you had the LA Rams with an amazing offense, a Niners team that was so resilient, and yet the Seahawks come out on top of the NFC, not just the NFC West, the NFC as a whole. They beat both the Niners and Rams in the playoffs, and now they have a chance to get a Super Bowl in San Francisco. Kind of funny enough, the last Super Bowl the Seahawks played in was in Arizona, so it's kind of interesting that these two Super Bowls, the past two Super Bowls the Seahawks have been locations of their division rivals. So can the Seahawks get a second Lombardi trophy with a New England? Can they continue on this legacy? Right? Can the Patriots add another Super Bowl? And overall, just very exciting. I think both these teams are warranted to be here. So let's really dive into kind of the this game here. So the way I want to dissect this is I want to focus on the Patriots offense versus the Seahawks defense first, and then the Seahawks offense versus the Patriots defense. Kind of go through some key matchups, some key players, and then kind of give my final guess of how I think this game will go. So let's begin with the Patriots offense versus the Seahawks defense. I think this is going to be kind of almost a deciding factor. This has really been two great units, and I think two great units that have done a lot with, I don't want to say a little, but they've really maximized their talent. Let's start here with the Seahawks defense with Mike McDonald. Sure, there's really good players on this team. I'm a huge Devon Witherspoon fan. I think he's a really good corner, probably top 2 to 3 in the NFL. DeMarcus Lawrence had a really good season. You had Nick Emanwari, the rookie safety. He was great. A great linebacking core. This was a defense where you have good players. You have Byron Murphy up front. You have just a lot of great talent, Leonard Williams. But I feel like Mike McDonald really got the best out of this group. And this defense, I think if the Seahawks win this Super Bowl, this is one of those nickname defenses. Sometimes you have those in NFL history where a defense is so good, you get a nickname for how good you are. I think of the 2015 Broncos, right, as an example, 10 years ago when they won the Super Bowl in San Francisco. You, of course, have other famous examples like the Legion of Boom, with Seattle. You have, Purple People Eaters with the Vikings. You have the Doomsday defense with the Cowboys. There's a lot of the Dome Patrol with the Saints. There's a lot of good examples of these nickname defenses, and I think Seattle's on the cusp of that if they win a Super Bowl. And then you have the Patriots offense, where sure there's guys like veteran receiver Stephon Diggs. You have Travion Henderson, who's a really good rookie running back. The starting back, Ramondre Stevenson's a good power back. You have some other good receivers here. I like some of the O-line pieces, but the fact that this offense has been as great as they are in the regular season, Drake May had an MVP, worthy season. This is a team that just seems like they can score points kind of at a whim, if you will. I think these are two units that, like I said, have been way better than I expected, especially with New England's offense. And I think that one area that I think New England matches up actually really well is their ability to go outside the numbers. Drake May leads the NFL this year in basically completed air yards per attempt. You might be like, what, or per completion, what does that mean? Basically, that means he threw the furthest down the field out of any quarterback in the NFL. Kind of a weird advanced metric, but watching a lot of Patriots games this year, I noticed that they were going down the field a lot. Those sideline passes here to Keyshawn Boutte, a receiver on their team. Kyle Williams, a rookie, also had a couple catches. Stephon Diggs, has some catches. I'm like, okay, it seems like they're going downfield, and I was trying to find a metric to back it up, and they did do that, and they did it very well. That's one thing about Drake May that really impresses me. Yes, the mobility, the ability to create is a really elite talent, but his ability to just kind of hit the downfield ball so accurate, I think is a really good skill. And that's something that does worry me a bit about the Seahawks defense. You look at the NFC Championship game where Seattle won, they were really struggling with down the field throws, kind of outside the numbers. Stafford was hitting Devontae Adams, Puka Nakua, and that's something that was kind of a bit of a worry factor for Seattle. I even go back to earlier in the season when they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is crazy to think that was this season. It almost feels like last year, but no, that was this season. The Bucs, Seahawks, and Baker Mayfield was going downfield to Emeka Ibuka, and you just kind of worry about the Seahawks down the field defense a bit in some matchups. I think there's times where they can really shrink it, but that is something that does kind of worry me a bit in this game. Is New England able to go downfield at ease? And I do think these receivers have stepped up to that. With the Rams example, you'd say, well, that's Puka Nakua, that's Devontae Adams. But I think these Patriots receivers can show they can step up to that challenge. I do think that's something that really goes in New England's way this game. And I could see kind of a blueprint here with Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator here for New England, who's pictured. He's been to the Super Bowl before, right? There's a lot of new stuff to the Patriots. That is one person that has been here before. And I think McDaniels just kind of knows the flow of the Super Bowls, right? He's won a lot of them as a coordinator in New England during the Bill Belichick, Tom Brady era of things. So I'm just really interested to see how does McDaniels go about this game. So far in the Patriots run, they have been playing it pretty safe, especially in the AFC Championship game. They've been running the ball, getting it out quickly, going kind of in that short middle area of the field. But I just do wonder in the Super Bowl that they try to go more aggressive. So I think New England has the advantage there. But I also think Seattle has an advantage elsewhere. The Seahawks defense, I think their defensive line is a really, really big plus for them. This defensive line, I think, is probably the strength of the team. Overall, you have Byron Murphy, who he's been really good as a defensive tackle. Leonard Williams, by the way, very cool. He's in the Super Bowl. He's been, on the Jets, the Giants. Nice to finally see him in the big game. That's just kind of cool to see. He's really good. Just kind of does everything well. DeMarcus Lawrence here, as I mentioned. And just Mike Macdonald, I think the head coach of the Seahawks really just has his defense. He's really good with defensive line and pressures. I go back to when he was with the Ravens. Up front, he did a lot of unique creative stuff. He's just really good at attacking offensive lines. And that is a main weakness for New England. That is a very big weakness. You go back to the AFC title game, the Broncos were getting constant pressure on the Patriots. And that is something that I think the Seattle could do. And Drake May, I think he's really good. But I do think sometimes he struggles with pressure. He's been sacked, I think, 15 or 16 times this playoffs? That's a pretty high amount. And sure, the Patriots have won those games, but I just kind of do worry how this game goes. And Mike Macdonald's ability to turn up the pressure, I think, is a very, very real thing. And I could see in this game where you got to need some plays late for New England. You got to get this offense going, and the Seahawks just bring that pressure. This offensive line for New England, I think, it's been better than people have expected. I'll give them credit. But they still have some holes and weaknesses, and I think that the Seahawks could exploit it. So I'm just really interested to see that. And kind of going on that note of the offensive line versus the defensive line, kind of this subcategory we have here, the Seahawks' run defense has been amazing. They've been really good. You look at the divisional round where they shut down Christian McCaffrey. I mean, this run defense is amazing. The way they just all swarm to the ball, it's really special stuff here. And the Patriots running game, I think, is kind of part of their success. They've ran it well in the playoffs. You have Ramondre Stevenson, a good power back with some good vision. You have Trayvon Henderson, who has kind of that explosiveness. If they're able to kind of shut that down, that's going to be really tough for New England. I could see a world here where this Seahawks defensive line and run defense just really shuts down New England. But I could also see a world where New England, like I said, is really able to get that deep passing game going. So just very interesting here when you break down the Patriots offense versus the Seahawks defense here. I think in terms of experience, because I do think that matters in the Super Bowl. Usually I kind of shrug off experience. I do think that is something to, be noteworthy of. I think it's about split but leaning New England. You kind of look at New England, you have Stephon Diggs on the team, who's been in the NFL for a while. Josh McDaniels, as I mentioned. Yes, the Seahawks do have some veteran guys like DeMarcus Lawrence and Leonard Williams and whatnot. But I do lean towards New England in experience. But I think this is going to be a very interesting way to see how these two units attack each other. I think in a lot of ways they're very similar. Like I said, how they've risen to where they are and how they will compete. I think it's just going to be very, very intriguing and definitely, I think, going to be Fun to see how they handle. How does Drake May handle it? Right. I think that's um, going to be a big game for him to see kind of where is the kind of just mindset for New England. Do they let Drake May be aggressive? Do they not? I think that's going to just be an element to watch play out. But yeah, Patriots offense versus Seahawks defense, very fascinating. And then we'll go to the Seahawks offense here, right? Helmed by offensive coordinator and for now seems like future Las Vegas Raiders head coach Clint Kubiak versus Mike Vrabel here, who is kind of the head of the defense, right? Head coach as well of the team. I think this is very interesting because I do think that both of these units have kind of had a similar type of feel where you kind of have one superstar player and then just a bunch of other guys playing well. Now, the thing gets a bit different where, you have Jason, right? Right receiver for the Seahawks. He's been fantastic. I'm very excited to see him go up against cornerback Christian Gonzalez. I think that is the premier matchup of the Super Bowl in a lot of ways. Two really good players who are both kind of young stars. That's what we love to see in the Super Bowl, and I'm really excited to see that. And I think Sam Darnold as well, quarterback for the Seahawks. I think he's had a really nice year. And you could say he's another star. But both of these teams just have a lot of kind of good role player guys. For Seattle, you have wide receiver Rashid Shaheed, who's great on return plays. Also, you have Cooper Kupp, who's been in Super Bowl. He's won it. I think Line's played better than expected. You have Kenneth Walker. He could also argue as a star. He's had a really good season. He'll be the main back here in the Super Bowl. And then you have the Patriots, where you have guys like Caleb Von Chason, who stepped up on the edge, Milton Williams, Robert Spillane, a bunch of other good players. So I don't know if role players is the role, but you have like one superstar, Gonzalez and Jason, and you have a bunch of other just pretty good players here. And I think it's going to be interesting to see. One unique thing about the Super Bowl is that both teams kind of have weaknesses on the O-line. The Seahawks offensive line did play better this year. I love that they drafted Gray Zabel, and I think he really helped with the Seahawks offensive line. That is still something of to note that, okay, that this offensive line at times can be a bit of a weakness for them. And I think the Patriots' defensive line has some good players on it. So I'm very interested to see how that goes, right? How much do the Seahawks run this game? How much do they not? I could see a world here where this game, because the Seahawks' two playoff games have been different in kind of the way they were, I guess, ran and how the rhythm of the games were different. You had the Niners where you blew out that team in the divisional round. It was very run heavy. Sam Darnold only had, 15 completions? He was really good in those 15 completions, but it was a run heavy game. Then you go to the Rams game, where it was more of a shootout. You were passing it heavy. I'm interested to see what the Seahawks do in this game. I can see a world here, though, where the defense plays really good in the first half and they just kind of run the ball, want to run the clock. I see this game kind of being quicker paced, to be honest. And I can see a world where that happens. The Seahawks want to be run heavy. However, you do have that Patriots defensive line. So I'm just very, very interested to see here how how does the Seahawks offense line adapt to New England's pressure and the men up front. I think that's going to be a big way to see if they can win in the trenches. And then, you kind of look at the passing game, right? With Sam Darnold, who's really good off of play action here. You have Jason. I think him versus Gonzalez is going to be intriguing, as I said here. I feel more set in stone about this matchup. A lot of people have predicted that Seahawks will land about 24 to 28 points, and I feel pretty certain about that, to be honest. I think that, they're able to get in a couple touchdowns, but I do think there'll be some times where the Patriots just more so make a good play than Seahawks making a bad play. Now, a lot of people talked about, is Sam Darnold going to really regress in this game? Is he going to have a bad game? I don't think that's going to happen. Is he going to be perfect? Is he going to go ahead and win the game? I'll let you know what I think. But I think he'll have a good game. I think he'll play solid. But yeah, I think around 26 points is kind of, 27 is where I think the Seahawks are able to do in this one here. I just do like a lot of the play calling from Clint Kubiak. I think he's a really good offensive mind. And I think he'll be able to put up about 27 points is kind of what I'm thinking for this one here, right? Get in that range. But is that enough to win is kind of the key question. But yeah, I think the Seahawks offense, I think ultimately the offensive line is a question. But I think the thing is, too, it's like Clint Kubiak can just make so much happen. He can move this guy here, and then boom, you have a big play open. And New England's defense sometimes like to be aggressive, sometimes like to be more safe. I could see them kind of in a couple instances where they try to do one thing and then the Clint Kubiak counters very well. Mike Vrabel's defenses have historically just played very smart, very tough. They kind of in that mix of kind of aggressive and conservative defenses here. Um, and they just like to kind of keep stuff in front of them, right? You go back to his days at the Titans. There's all those types of defenses here where they make the tackles for loss, make the key deflections, do a lot of that here. But I do think these Seahawks playmakers from JSN to Cooper Kupp with his experience will have kind of that knowledge and those skills to make the catch, not get tackled, to keep going. So yeah, I do like Seahawks on offense over the Patriots defense, but I do think New England's defense could have some good moments. All right, let's look at some key players here in this game. I thought this was kind of a neat graphic, kind of going position by position, talking about how I think these guys will perform. I do think we're going to start here actually at the bottom because I think both these tight ends actually kind of have an interesting point of what do they play, and I could see one, if not both, these guys actually being the heroes of this game. And I kind of am interested to see how Patriots tight end Hunter Henry plays. I think Hunter Henry has been a very solid tight end ever since he's been in the NFL. When he was on the Chargers, I was a big fan of him. I really thought, okay, this guy's going to be, elite. And while that quite hasn't happened, Henry's been a good player. And I could see on this game, late in the game, fourth quarter, 3rd down 8, you got to have Drake May, boom, fires for Hunter Henry here. I do like these Seattle linebackers, but I think Henry has that poison and knowledge where he could have a really good game. And A.J. Barner as well, you could argue is a bit of a weakness for Seattle, but like I said, I do trust Clint Kubiak to scheme some stuff up. Then you have Keyshawn Boutte and Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp's 1-0 in Super Bowls in his career, and then can you get another one? You have Boutte, who I think's had a really good season. I think both of these guys could be big impact guys. I could see a world here where the Patriots really focus on covering JSN. That's their main focus. Like, hey, Christian Gonzalez, Carlton Davis, you focus on JSN, and then JSN maybe has a quieter game, but Cooper Kupp gets some big plays here. Cooper Kupp had a good season. I thought that signing was going to be He actually played pretty well for the team. He had some good catches. He's a good route runner. He has some similarities to a tight end where he's tough and physical, but there's still a lot of smoothness to his game that I don't think can be outright ignored here. So yeah, Cooper Kupp, I think ultimately very solid receiver who could have some big plays if the Patriots do go and really say, hey, we want to really just make sure Jason's not an issue. You also have not pictured Rashid Shaheed, big play down the threat. So that's why I'm very confident in Seahawks offense is because, okay, you take away one guy, you have other guys to really answer. Stephon Diggs, I think, could have a really nice game. He's going against Stephon Witherspoon, but I could see him moving around the field. I could see Josh McDaniels maneuvering him. Okay, you go here, you go there, type of deal. I'm just happy that Stephon is in a Super Bowl. It's been a tough journey for him with those losses to the Bills and on the Vikings. The fact that he's finally here, I'm happy. And I also think, too, a bit of the legacy of it. I think for both of these receivers here, Jason and Stephon Diggs, I think this is both a big legacy for them in this game. If Stephon wins a Super Bowl, where does that put him all time? I'm not saying top 10, but maybe top 30, 40. Like, there's a lot of really good receivers in the NFL. A lot of them. But I think winning a Super Bowl with the career he's had could make things very interesting, right? I think that's a very interesting talking point. And in JSN as well. I mean, the elite season he's had, fantastic, really amazing. One of the best players in the NFL this season. If he wins a Super Bowl, this could be argued as one of the better wide receiver seasons to happen. And for him to have this Super Bowl already, that would be really exciting for him. So that's just kind of a little note to keep an eye on. And then the two running backs, Walker and Stevenson, going to have a tough game with the offensive lines and how do they hold up. But I really want to focus here on the quarterbacks, Drake May versus Sam Darnold. A cool matchup because this is the first time that we've had a starting quarterback for each of them in the respective draft classes. With Sam Darnold, I mean, this is the first time a quarterback's from the 2018 Super Bowl has started, or 2018 draft class has started a Super Bowl. And that was a draft class with Lamar Jackson, with Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, right? So for Sam Darnold to be the first quarterback starting from that draft class in the Super Bowl is exciting for him. And I'm just really proud of Sam Darnold's journey from the days of the Jets. I still remember his first NFL game. It was Jets versus Lions. It was Jets at Lions, and his first pass was a pick six, but then he went on to play pretty well. Ultimately, things did not go well for the Jets, but I still remember that, his first win. And, the issues he had with New England in the division. The Patriots always had good schemes for him and whatnot. And now the fact that he's here in the Super Bowl, the chance to beat the Patriots, it's just so cool. It's one of my favorite storylines in the NFL. And I just think in this game, there's a lot of cool storylines for Seattle and really both teams. I think that, as we'll talk about here, there is, this sense of legacy in this game, the rematch. But I also think there's a lot of new, interesting players where we could look back on this game and be like, okay, a lot of these guys' legacy started because of this. And you also have Drake May. I mean, year two Super Bowl from that 2024 draft class. I really think Drake May is having a really good career so far. MVP caliber guy. He's personally my pick to win MVP. I still stand by that. I just think he's had a fantastic year so far. And if he gets a Super Bowl in year two, and an MVP-like season is a very good start for him. And I do think New England has a really good infrastructure. I don't want to say they're done, but look at Joe Burrow, 2021. That was his second year starting. He made it to the Super Bowl, lost to an NFC West team in the Rams, and Burrow has had troubles in the postseason since the Bengals have really fallen apart. Now, do I think the Patriots, will that happen to Drake May? Not necessarily. But the fact that Drake May's in the Super Bowl, it's just really cool to see. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Patriots, Seahawks again. But this is the first, Patriots Super Bowl in my lifetime to not have Tom Brady in it. I'm a big Tom Brady fan. But it's just neat to see a different face here in Drake May. I always remember in Madden, right, when you would play Madden, go into franchise mode, Tom Brady, and this was like Madden 18 or 19, he would always retire after 1 year. And the question was, who would be the Patriots quarterback for the future? And now to finally see that guy in New England, it being Drake May, it's just kind of a cool moment. So I think both these quarterbacks, they also play similar. Big arms, can create on the run. Sometimes you have a pick here and there. But I think this is just such a cool thing to watch out on here for the quarterback. So yeah, I wanted to just kind of run through these kind of key players here on the offense here to see kind of just some similarities, differences, and whatnot. But I think, both these teams are very talented. I think a lot of this game is going to come down to on the stage, right? In San Francisco, who do I think, takes the, who do I think has what takes, if you will, or kind of the experience in this game? Because I do think that is something to mention. I think there's a couple of key points I wanted to mention. Let's start with Seattle, because I think the New England points are a bit more kind of talked about, but there's some Seattle stuff I wanted to talk about. Mike Macdonald, the head coach of the Seahawks, he was with John Harbaugh, and the Ravens for a couple years. He's been at Michigan. He is someone who coached as a defensive coordinator in 2023 in the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs and did a really good job. So, yes, this is the first time he's here as a head coach and first time in a Super Bowl period, but he does have that, I think, big game experience to a degree. And I do think that is something that does matter here and is important. Also, Clint Kubiak. His dad, Gary Kubiak, 10 years ago, won a Super Bowl with the Broncos when they defeated the Carolina Panthers. So, I do think there is some experience on that Seahawks side. I also think, too, Sam Darnold, people talk about, as I said before, is he going to have, a big flub in a moment? I think him winning the NFC title game erased my fears of that. I think the Seahawks game, the Seahawks team beating the Rams just did a lot of that, kind of relieving the pressure. Yes, the Super Bowl is still different, but, I don't know. I just kind of look at media week this week, and I just see this calmness with Seattle. I really just... They have this level-headedness. I do think that's just important to mention. I think beating the Rams in their own home was a huge win for this team. It was a big accomplishment. It's really, I think, provided them a lot of confidence. And I do think that's important, right? I remember back in, 2016, if you all know that Super Bowl, the 20-3 Super Bowl, where the Falcons were up and then they lost. On a podcast, Matt Ryan, the Falcons quarterback at the time, really said that halftime momentum was a killer, right? Because the Falcons had all this momentum, then it stopped. And that's what led to the Falcons losing. So, and we've had other players talk about, the Super Bowl is a big stage. So I think the fact that Seattle has that confidence, has that relaxation, kind of, hey, we beat the Rams, we can do this, I do think that helps. For New England side of things, you have Mike Vrabel, who's won a Super Bowl before. I do think there's this fact that he wants to get it. He was with the Titans. Things didn't go well, but he's with the Patriots here. I do think that's just a key factor in this game, and I mentioned it when I talked about the Patriots offense, is the Josh McDaniels of it all here. I think he's kind of getting a bit underrated. I know a lot of people are not a fan of Josh McDaniels due to some off-the-field drama he had with coaching teams and some stuff. At the end of the day, he's a really good offensive mind, and he is someone who's been in the Super Bowl against the Seahawks team, right? And I just do think that does matter here. So I think just the Patriots here having that in-game experience, I do think is really interesting. And I do kind of just like the mentality Mike Vrabel has of underdogs. Of hey, a lot of people are saying the dynasty's back, but Vrabel has this, kind of he's talked about we got to kind of keep things steady, right? We're kind of the underdogs here, and that's kind of what's been talked about. And that's the other thing too that I just find interesting about this game is you have the Patriots as underdogs in the Super Bowl. I don't know if that ever happened during the Tom Brady era, maybe earlier, but I don't know. So on the stage here, I do think the Seahawks are pretty good there, but New England, they've been there, and I do think that counts for a large part of something. But let's talk here about some storylines, right? The big one is, as you can see in this graphic, the rematch of 11 years ago. So talking about that, I think the Seahawks-Patriots 2014 Super Bowl is the best NFL game I've ever seen. And I will stand on that mark. Until there's a game better, I think that game had all. Drama, great defense, great offense. Just the story of that 2014 game, I think, is incredible. I really do. I really, really do. I think it's one of the best games of sports. I think it's fantastic. Part of this might be nostalgia because that was kind of when I was getting into football, but I rewatch it and I think it's incredible. I think it is the best game that I've ever seen in terms of football. I also did want to talk here about the famous interception, right? So here's my thoughts on it, right? The passing at the goal line. And I wanted to touch on this, right? Because, it's been talked about. It was kind of funny at the NFL Super Bowl Media Week. They had people asking, like, Mike McDonald and Sam Darnold, what would you do? Would you pass or run it? I think that's a bit odd. Like, Mike McDonald got asked it like 5 times. I'm like, okay, once or twice is fine. Yeah, I got asked like 5 times. I thought, though, he had good answers. But kind of talking about this, right? Here's the thing. If that play works, people don't really talk about it at all. Oh, or Russell Wilson threw a touchdown. Yeah, they won. Okay. And they go on to win. And I know a lot of people say, well, you had Marshawn Lynch. Why didn't you do it? The game I'm going to bring to mind is the 2009 Super Bowl versus the New Orleans Saints and the Indianapolis Colts. Saints were underdogs in that game. Coming out of halftime, Sean Payton, the Saints head coach, went for an onside kick. If the Colts recover that, that sets up Peyton Manning and the Colts in great field position, and there's a chance that we talk about the Saints having no Super Bowls. But instead, the Saints go for the onside kick, they get it, and they go on to win. Drew Brees and the Saints get their ring. And I just think it's interesting sometimes in sports where the risk of something, sometimes, yes, it's awesome to talk about that play happened, but what about the flip side if it didn't happen, right? I think for every pick at the goal line that you have of a gamble paying off badly, you have one playing off greatly. I'm an Eagles fan. I think back in Super Bowl 57, the Philly special throwing to Nick Foles, that's risky. Yeah, it was pulled off. I'm happy it's an iconic moment. But I think there's this talk about the risk. And I think, yes, it's easy to say as fans, why didn't you run with Marshawn Lynch? But if Malcolm Butler, who made an amazing play, and the Bill Belichick talked about that they ran that play during practice, which is crazy. Like, if they don't do that, and Russell Wilson throws it, and it's a touchdown, we're talking about, okay, and there's a bunch of crazy throws made in the Super Bowl that have been made. You talk about Eli Manning versus the Patriots in 2011, that dangerous throw down the sideline to Mario Manningham. What if that gets intercepted? What if people saying, why did you throw that when you could have done this? As I mentioned, the Saints-Colts, if Sean Payton, if that onside kick goes to the Colts, people are saying, why did you onside kick? Why did you give it to Peyton Manning? So all this to say, if I'm Pete Carroll, do I probably run it? Yeah, but I don't think passing it is as bad as people say it is, to be honest. I just think that Pete Carroll and those Seahawks teams are a really good team. I mean, they beat Peyton Manning and the Broncos in 2013. They demolished them in the Super Bowl, and they almost beat the Patriots. I also think, too, that Pete Carroll era was defined by kind of being a bit more risky with some of the draft picks going against the grain, doing things differently. So the passing it, I think it makes more sense. I just want to talk about that because I think with this game being a rematch, I wanted to dive into that. But besides that, I do think this is just a really cool game. Every that game also kind of created this Patriots-Seahawks rivalry. Where in 2012, yes, the teams played each other. Now that was iconic. But then you had 2016, where these two teams played. The Seahawks won. 2020, during the COVID year, Cam Newton as a Patriot versus Russell Wilson as a Seahawks. Russell Wilson, the Seahawks. I always remember that game. The shootout they had. Cam Newton as a Patriot had his ups and downs, but that was one of his better games, and that was a really, really great game. And that was a time, during the COVID times where things were scary, and I just remember that game and getting that much joy from it. It was a really fun one. And you look at 2024, Patriots Seahawks played last year. And both teams were kind of in transition year, but that game was really fun. And I think these two teams just have this iconic way when they play. I think this will be a close game. I've seen so many people say the Seahawks are going to win by 20 points. And I think this is just going to be a close one here. I also think, too, here as well, that there is a sense, there's this sense here as well of kind of things have been flipped. And I love this image because you have kind of the current with the past, right? It's kind of a cool example there. But it's kind of interesting because, last time these teams matched up, you had the Patriots who had Tom Brady, this proven team. Everyone, I don't know what the projection line was, but you had this established team where the Seahawks were kind of, yes, they won a Super Bowl, there's this up-and-coming nature. Here you have everyone thinks the Seahawks are going to win, the Patriots are going to be underdogs. And it's just kind of cool to have just a legacy Super Bowl in 2014, 11 years later, and how much is different in the same. You have Josh McDaniels, who was there as an offensive coordinator 11 years ago. But you have a different quarterback and weapons, right? I don't think there's any player on these teams who were in that Super Bowl, right? So it's just really cool when you talk about renewing this rivalry. And it feels like this NFL season has just been a mix of kind of new and old. We've had players who are up there in age ball out. Matthew Stafford's been awesome. We've had established guys really just play awesome this year. Myles Garrett, who's been in the league for a couple years, played great. We've had a lot of these established players play awesome. We've also had some new guys, the Caleb Williams of the world, the Drake Mays of the world, right? The resurgence of like a Sam Darnold, a Daniel Jones for the Colts. It feels like this is a perfect culmination of the season where you have the new and the old, but it just feels different in a good way. And I think that's a perfect way how I feel about the Super Bowl, why I'm so excited for it. And I think it's cool it's just in San Francisco. I think that's a great setting. So, who do I think wins this game? Speaking of San Francisco, one awesome picture, by the way. This is beautiful. This one's tough. It legitimately is. Because I could see a world in where both teams win. I do. And I could see a world where this happens. I'm going to be honest. I actually went into this podcast with the idea that I had New England winning. I did. I think that there was a lot of stuff they did really good. I think they're a really good, complete team. Great coaching. Mike Vrabel, that culture is amazing. Right? However, I think I'm going to end with the Seahawks winning. And this is I don't know. This is what's tough for me because I think one thing that I really held in high regard for New England was the fact that they had, the experience of Josh McDaniels and Mike Vrabel. But I talked about Clint Kubiak, Mike McDonald. They have been there before. And I just do think that the Seahawks offense putting up 27, 28 points, I don't see New England getting to 30. I just don't. I do think Seattle wins. That's my ultimate guess. I originally had the Patriots. I thought they were going to get it. But I think the Seahawks have that experience. And I just think, talking about, the Patriots defense, how they're going to match up with these other Seahawks playmakers. Yeah, you take care of Jason. How do you take care of Cooper Kupp? How do you cover Rashid Shaheed, right? So I'm going to go with the Seahawks. I'm going to go with the Seahawks winning it. I'm going to say 28 to 22-23. I'll say 28 to 23. Or 28-24. I think the Patriots Seahawks Super Bowl in 2014 was 24-21. I'll go 28-24 Seattle winning. I went in with New England, but my mind changed. I have the Seahawks winning it all. I do. And I just really think that the fact that they beat that Rams team, I think the Rams are better than the Patriots. I just think that does account for something. And the weaknesses that the Seahawks do have, like the offensive line and whatnot, I do think they can make up for it with the excellent coaching they have. And I think in a matchup where both teams have really good coaching, the experience both teams have it, it just comes down to a roster. And the main thing was when I was talking about the Seahawks offense, I'm like, besides the O-line, I don't see New England really slowing down this. I think Seattle gets 28. I think Mike McDonald's defense are not going to allow New England to win. So I have the Seahawks winning it in San Francisco, but I think it'll be a fun, close game. And that was a really fun one, y'all. Hope y'all enjoy this. A lot of areas I wanted to cover here, but I think we did it pretty well. I will be having a Super Bowl recap show coming to y'all, and I also will be doing a head coach grading. We have all the new head coaches in the league, all the new hires. I'll be bringing that to y'all. So thank you very much for watching and enjoy the Super Bowl Sunday. It is here. And if you're not a big Super Bowl fan, let me know what movie trailers, what snacks, what are you doing? It's just such a fun event. It's been a wildly fun season, and I'm excited to see how it concludes.